In this course, I'll show you how to use Ponga to zoom over the generation gap with pictures. Hello, I'm Barbara, one of the co-founders here at Ponga. I know that for many of you, this may be the first time you've heard of Ponga. We totally understand. We're a small startup, quite released our software in the spring of 2021 in the middle of a pandemic. So let me take a moment to give you a little quick snapshot. Ponga creates a new way to organize your pictures quickly and easily so that you can use them to privately share stories with family and friends. Here at Ponga, we've always been about sharing the stories that matter. That's especially important to family historians and genealogists. We are technologists with a deep personal interest in the stories of our own families. As families, many of us now gather over Zoom regularly to share news, challenges, and accomplishments. These little micro updates become stories of who we are individually and the values we share as a family. I'm going to show you how to use Ponga to explore stories and pictures one-on-one or as a group. When you record the whole session in Zoom, you'll create a standard-spaced video that can be shared as a memento or used in snippets to add color to your stories. If you've heard this before, just fast forward a stitch or two. Here at Ponga, we've always been about sharing stories that matter. That's especially important to family historians and genealogists like you. We are technologists with a deep personal interest in the stories of our own families. We realize that the photographs, albums, and books we've been lucky enough to inherit host a treasure trove of stories. Preserving these artifacts in digital form not only creates a backup, but it also creates new opportunities to explore these stories in context. Modern technologies have created new ways to make connections and look at context. Today, there are wonderful companies out there applying advanced AI and networks to capture images with modern cameras and scanners, edit and restore the resulting images with software, store those images, and make them accessible from all of your devices. Print the images into new books and artifacts. But at Ponga, we realized that while AI, computer vision, and the resources of the internet created these opportunities to connect, none was really using this technology to let you connect the context of your stories to your pictures. This is digital storytelling. We started by using AI to detect and collect faces so we could quickly organize them into neat albums and label people in every photo. When you know who was there at the moment a photograph was taken, you can explore the details to understand the context, the occasion, and the story behind it. In Ponga, we've created a way to tell that story by letting you use today's always connected internet to capture research from online archives and databases, crowdsource stories from family, friends, and acquaintances who can share memories, and curate what you've learned into a legacy you can pass on to the next generation. Principles of data integrity and privacy guided us. The way we see it, stories bring us together and define us as families and as individuals. These stories are important. We realize that a story told on a sofa is not the same as one performed on stage. Ponga ensures that your pictures are private and accessible only to people you invite as your guests. That said, digital artifacts protects them for future generations. To our children, grandchildren, and the generations that follow, the best chance of hearing these stories, our photos, and the associated material have to be captured in their original, standards-based formats. We also knew that we couldn't own it all. A standards-based implementation has allowed us to pull in content from anywhere on the web. We also knew that to tell legacy stories, you need an archival repository you can control and you can have the confidence will be there for you permanently. In this course, you'll learn how to use Ponga to trigger the stories hidden in our old family photos using Zoom. Our learning objectives will take us deep enough into the technical setup to explore two specific use cases of using Ponga and Zoom. First, how to zoom over the generation gap with a one-on-one conversation. We'll start with the example of a grandparent and a grandchild, and you'll quickly see how to extend that to any combination. 2. How to set up Zoom to capture the dynamics of shared storytelling. A Zoom call structured around the stories and family photos creates something that can be enjoyed for years to come. It's like a new kind of home movie. Don't worry, you don't need to fuss with any special cables or connectors. I'll show you how to configure your Zoom and computer settings. You'll learn to anticipate the simple human factors that will make everyone feel comfortable and open to sharing. I have a few little tricks to keep the hard of hearing comfortable, translate Auntie's story into English, and help make even the little ones feel like heroes. I'll start with use cases. The two are like polar opposites, and you'll quickly see the range of variations you might try for your own remote gatherings. So let's get to it. Our first use case describes a one-on-one conversation between a grandparent and a grandchild, where pictures help jump the generation gap. I believe it works because a grandparent and grandchild can be the perfect combination of storyteller and listener. That seems like a universal, doesn't it? The simple conversation itself, like conversations about the weather, can bring individuals together. I'll show you how stories that resonate can inspire empathy. When conversations are anchored in a moment in time, a grandchild starts asking questions with no agenda or preconceptions. That makes it easy for the grandparent to spill details no one else might ever have heard. These are the gems. These kinds of conversations bring out the authenticity. In our second use case, we'll talk about how you can combine Zoom and Ponga to engage a group of people. I'll show you specifically how you can use a recording of this kind of session to create a new kind of artifact that captures those dynamics in shared storytelling. By now you know how Zoom works to simply set up a video conference. I'll show you how you can use Ponga during a Zoom conversation to point to image details. I'll show you how you can record the entire session and turn it into a video you can give as a gift or simply share with your loved ones as something they can enjoy at any time they want on an iPad, Nixplay, or Smart TV. There's an implied concept here I'd like to spell out because it's personal for me. In developing this story, I've thought deeply about the constraints of working with frail or cognitively impaired loved ones. Pointing into a picture creates a simple way to engage in a story with simple language. With the right setup for the call, pictures can evoke stories and references that draw out the narrative arc at the soul of a family. These stories just might be interesting enough that the little ones will remember that they were there to hear them told. In this course, we're talking about two use cases. At a high level, it's just a difference in the number of participants. One is a one-on-one conversation, and the other includes a number of participants. The exact number doesn't matter, but we'll get back to the dynamics later. Zoom sets up a video call, and like an ordinary call, both sides need to have the equipment to connect. In the same way, each of your participants will have to have the Zoom app installed. While installations are free, there are restrictions. You'll use Ponga to focus the conversation on a photo. The person sharing their picture in Ponga just opens it in a browser window on a desktop or laptop computer and shares that screen with everyone else on Zoom. It's pretty much like using a slide projector in a room full of people. Now, while only Ponga members can upload pictures, they can share pictures with any number of free guests. Plus, they can selectively offer guests the ability to add comments. Members might choose to limit some guests to viewing their pictures. It's entirely up to them. A guest can also upgrade at any time so they can upload their own pictures. So with that as background, let's go into the details of our two cases. To use Ponga one-on-one to connect a grandparent and a grandchild, there are a few obvious social aspects going on. The good news is that these can work for us. While every family is different, it can often be difficult for grandparents to connect with their grandchildren. To borrow some unfair stereotypes, children may want to talk about their world of skateboards or animation characters, while grandparents might want to tell that old story about walking 5 miles to school in the snow. Pictures can offer a useful distraction from all that. By selecting pictures and sharing them on screen, grandparent and grandchild can center the conversation in the real world as caught by camera. It might depend on personal dynamics, age, and cognitive abilities, but either side could initiate screen sharing, and either side might own the picture. To the child, the grandparent's stories no longer seem apocryphal or silly. It happened. It was real. All children certainly aren't the same, but they typically are pretty interested in what their parents' lives were like. Staged right, a parent can seem like a co-conspirator in a grand plan to collect dirt on their parents. Did Dad complain about chores too? They might ask. To the grandparent, the selection of a picture could be part of a narrative arc they've been trying to share with their grandchildren. Pictures might be connected, for example, one to another through a family tree. Each picture could be covered on subsequent evenings to introduce stories about different ancestors. Age can create some special challenges that make complex stories difficult to communicate. I'm based here in the United States, where a huge portion of the population are 1 or 2 generations from having immigrated. So language can be a problem. Modern tools like Google Translate, accessible from a browser, melts the language barrier in Ponga. As we age, other challenges can also get in the way. Some, like hearing and vision loss, can be addressed with assistive technologies that work well with computers, like Bluetooth hearing aids and screen magnification. So a few tips for using Ponga over Zoom in these one-on-one sessions with your loved one. First, decide which side shares their screen with the Ponga picture on Zoom. Generally, you'll want the person most comfortable with technology to be one sharing their screen. It doesn't take a lot to hit the share button on Zoom, but there are a few confusing concepts to sort through. Next, it's generally a good idea to tick the Share Sound button in the Share panel. This ensures that any sounds that play back in your Ponga picture, like embedded videos, for example, will be heard by everyone you are sharing your screen with in Zoom. Third, be thoughtful when you share your screen. Generally, it's a good idea to share as an app, like Chrome, for example, rather than sharing your entire desktop. That will ensure that you don't inadvertently share notifications about incoming messages with everyone on the Zoom call. Fourth, while recording voice comments in Ponga are a delightful way to share stories, it's hard to focus on recording a story while an entire group of people are watching. Also, keep in mind that the voice record or mic button only records the voice of the person who has Ponga open in their own browser. In other words, the mic button can only pick up the sound of the microphone attached to the computer where the browser window is open. Fifth, it's helpful to have a plan for the session so you don't confuse your guest, especially if they're elderly or frail. If you can be ready with a specific set of pictures to share and focus on, then share your plan right at the start of the session. That will help your guest anticipate questions and have a sense for how much longer it will run. For the cognitively or physically challenged, it can take a great deal of energy to stay focused, so a long session can be exhausting. Take your time and break the effort into multiple sessions. That can be more fun for everyone. Finally, and this is really key to the whole idea, you'll want to record your session. Once you have it recorded, you can link portions of it for playback anywhere in the pictures you've shown. I'll talk some more about how to use that recording closer to the end of the video, as it applies to both cases. Keep in mind that the goal of zooming over the generation gap is more about a meaningful connection than it is about conclusively documenting a fact. You want to go into it thinking about visiting family, not taking a deposition. Unlike a meeting for tea, a connection over Zoom can easily produce a free bonus in a video recording of the entire conversation. Since the same is true for our second case, we'll cover that when we cover both cases together. Let's take a look now at our second case, using Zoom and Ponga to capture crowdsourced stories live. This time, I'm going to focus on a specific example where the intent of the Zoom session is to capture a live conversation for the benefit of others who will view the recording later. The idea for this was actually suggested to us by a Ponga member who was actually looking for a way to create materials that would engage her mother, who suffers from dementia. No longer able to speak, it made her mother happy to feel like she was participating in family storytelling. While she's originally planning a photo book, the video idea was exciting because her mother could watch it over and over again on an iPad she keeps at hand. Hearing the voices and seeing the faces of her family members, plus the happy banter as they engage in the photos and memories, created a special treasure. Watching it recorded spared her the stress of needing to respond to everyone live, a particular problem for elders for whom hearing and vision have become difficult. Since this use case uses Zoom as the production studio, the cameras, lights, and sets are all in place. Now, to be sure, there are 3 important differences between this approach and the first one. First, as I mentioned, Zoom requires that connections of 3 or more be hosted by a paid account if they're going to exceed 40 minutes. More about that in some of the resources in our show notes and handout. Second, in this scenario, Ponga plays the role of centering the conversation. If you're the host setting this up, you'll be setting the agenda, so plan for a specific set of Ponga pictures to share and think ahead about the narrative to work through as a theme. Winter holidays, for example, or our immigration route. That kind of thing can be very helpful to keep everyone on the same track. Also, as a practical matter, it can be useful to have each picture you want to talk about ready to go in separate tabs before the call begins. Third, remember our goal. In this scenario, it's to produce a recording. In the first case, it was a coincidental benefit. If your goal is to produce a recording, then let Zoom be your recording studio and you're the host. Ask everyone to include their names clearly in their Zoom windows. It just takes a right click to fix that. And remind them to use the mute button wisely. Mention your special recipient who will get the video. You don't have to do everything at once. You can even schedule multiple sessions. So I know I've just hit you with a lot of details for this case, so let's take a moment to summarize. We've created a way to capture the crowdsourcing of stories live and recorded to video. You'll use Zoom to bring everyone to the same virtual table, then center the conversation in family photographs using Ponga. As we showed in our best practices, this is the most effective when everyone has a clear understanding of the goal and you've taken time to anticipate the logistics. Zoom recordings are free to record on desktops and laptops, and the recording is stored on your local drive. When you hit the record button in your Zoom session, Zoom will capture the session in its own real-time format, then converts it to an MP4 video format for you automatically after the call. This is because that conversion can take a lot of processing power. With their compression, Zoom recording files will vary in size depending on whether you're recording a screen sessions or live video. A 90-minute live session with lots of live video can be upwards of 1 gigabyte in size, so keep that in mind. I know I've just hit you with a lot of technology details, so let's circle back and look at those two cases together. First, keep in mind that you'll need Zoom on all devices involved. That includes desktop, laptop computers, phones, and tablets. Remember to have a group of 3 or more participants in a Zoom session lasting more than 40 minutes. You'll need to have a paid account. Second, only Ponga lets you zoom into, manipulate, and add content to a picture while you're on a call. To do that, you'll need to be logged into the Ponga account. But that's about it. You share that onto Zoom, and either members or guests can share. Finally, recordings. All you need to do is click the record button in Zoom. Everyone on the call is informed, and your recording is stored either locally or in the cloud. Only paid accounts support cloud-based recording. So there you have it. I've shown you 2 examples of using digital storytelling to help elders connect with a younger generation across the country or across the globe using Zoom and Ponga. These 2 high-level cases with variations can stand in for many, many more. For our Zoom over the generation gap case, we imagine a one-on-one conversation. I showed you how you can capture that conversation in a recording that by itself can support further family research or can produce useful snippets you can integrate after the call into selections in your pictures. For Zoom to capture crowdsourced stories live, I described a one-to-many conversation with one participant sharing 1 or more pictures and then recording the whole session either locally or in the cloud. I've given you background about how Ponga and Zoom work and how they work together. I've included a handout with this course that you can use for reference and follow-up research. I hope I've also given you enough background, color, and inspiration to extrapolate on how these might apply to your own use cases. We really recommend recording any live session on Zoom where you'll be talking about family history. This is important because video is incredibly powerful. Video captures nuances of expression, tone, and body language that voice recordings and photos can only hint at. One of the things we love about Ponga is being able to pull all of these together and wrap them in context. Join us here at Ponga once a month when we do our Zoom-in sessions, and we can talk about some of these kinds of details and, frankly, get your suggestions for what to do going forward. Thanks again.